18 years after her father's mysterious death, Janelle Carter walks into Aether Dynamics not as a heiress, but as a mechanic. When the company's prized Skyhawk X fails, the arrogant CEO dares her to fix it, and regrets it moments later. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps give light to voices that deserve to be seen and heard. Beneath her worn overalls and scuffed work boots, Janelle is more than a mechanic. She is a daughter on a mission. As she digs deeper, she uncovers her father's stolen designs and the dark, deadly corporate secrets behind his untimely death. What started as an outsider's challenge transforms into a powerful whistleblower's crusade, one that threatens to tear down an empire built on stolen genius and finally deliver justice to her father's legacy. Before we dive back into the story, I'd love to hear where you're watching from today. If you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow's episode is a special one you won't want to miss. The summer heat rippled across the tarmac as Janelle Carter approached the gleaming Aether Dynamics facility. Unlike the pristine glass and steel skyscraper that housed some of the nation's brightest aerospace minds, Janelle arrived dressed in worn overalls, her work boots scuffed from years of honest labor. Her calloused hands gripped a battered leather tool bag, her father's, as she pushed through the revolving doors into a world that had never been built for someone like her. Inside, the reception area buzzed with purpose and prestige. Men in crisp white shirts and women in tailored blazers hurried past, security badges swinging from their necks as they made their way to important meetings. Janelle stepped up to the front desk where a receptionist with perfectly manicured nails looked up, offering a practiced smile that faltered the moment she took in Janelle's appearance. "I'm here about the temp mechanic position," Janelle said, her voice steady despite the receptionist's skeptical glance. After 20 tense minutes and 3 security checkpoints, Janelle finally stood at the entrance of Hangar 7, the crown jewel of Aether Dynamics testing facilities. Inside the cavernous space sat the company's most ambitious project, the Skyhawk X, a next-generation jet promising to revolutionize both military and civilian aviation. As Janelle stepped through the hangar doors, conversations dimmed, and engineers' expressions shifted quickly from curious to dismissive. A tall man with streaks of gray at his temple snickered to his colleague, loud enough for Janelle to hear. "Looks like someone took a wrong turn at the janitor's closet." Janelle kept her gaze forward, jaw set with quiet resolve. She had heard worse. At the center of the hangar, surrounded by a circle of men in expensive suits, stood Preston Maddox. Even without introduction, Janelle could tell he was the one in charge. Every detail of him, from the perfectly tailored three-piece suit to his commanding stance, screamed power and privilege. His silver cufflinks caught the light as he gestured grandly toward the sleek aircraft behind him. "Gentlemen, the Skyhawk X represents the future of American aerospace dominance," Preston announced, his voice ringing with confidence in front of VIP investors and military officials. Its proprietary combustion system delivers 30% more thrust while consuming 20% less fuel than anything currently in service. As Preston continued his pitch, a young technician with a clipboard approached Janelle. "You must be the new hire," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Liam Rivas, junior systems technician." "Janelle Carter," she replied, firmly shaking his hand. "HR said I'd be starting today. They didn't mention I'd be walking into the middle of Preston's dog and pony show." Liam grimaced. Bad timing. Before Janelle could respond, a sudden commotion erupted near the aircraft. Warning lights flashed across a nearby console as technicians scrambled around the Skyhawk X's exposed engine housing. "What's happening?" one of the investors asked nervously, stepping back. "Just a minor calibration issue," Preston assured him, though the tightness in his voice betrayed his unease. The lead engineer, a stern-faced man with wire-rimmed glasses, called out, "Systems not responding to restart sequence. Auxiliary power failing." Preston's smile vanished. He hurried to the console, whispering sharply, "Fix it." Investors exchanged worried glances as Preston struggled to mask the malfunction with forced laughter. "Well, gentlemen, sometimes even the most advanced technology needs a little coaxing." Janelle watched closely, her eyes narrowing as she studied the diagnostic readouts on the nearest monitor. A pattern in the power fluctuations caught her attention, one she recognized instantly. "That's an airflow choke in the auxiliary combustion system," she muttered under her breath. Liam glanced at her, surprised. "What did you say?" "The fuel mixture is too rich at the intake, causing back pressure in the tertiary valve," Janelle explained quietly. "It's stalling the system before ignition can stabilize." Liam stared, clipboard forgotten. "How could you possibly know that from here?" Janelle shrugged. "I've seen this fluctuation pattern before." The commotion grew louder as more engineers gathered around the jet, their voices tense. Preston's face turned a dangerous shade of red as he berated his team. "This is exactly what we cannot have happen today," he snapped. "These people are here to invest millions." Something inside Janelle shifted. Maybe it was the familiarity of the problem, or the dismissive tone Preston used toward his own team, that made her act. Before doubt could take hold, she stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. The hangar fell silent, every head turned toward her. The woman in worn overalls standing defiantly amid the sea of white coats and suits. Preston stared, a mixture of confusion and annoyance crossing his face. "And you are?" "Janelle Carter," she replied calmly. "I'm here about the mechanic position." A ripple of laughter rolled through the engineers. Preston's lips curved into a condescending smile. "Well, Miss Carter, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this is hardly a job for a garage mechanic," he said, glancing dismissively at her clothes. "We don't run a charity garage here." The laughter grew louder, some investors joining in the mockery, while military officials remained impassive. Janelle felt her cheeks flush, but kept her voice steady. "The airflow is choking at the auxiliary combustion chamber because the fuel mixture is too rich," she explained. "The tertiary valve is experiencing back pressure, which is why your ignition sequence keeps failing." Preston's smile hardened. "And you determined this from across the room, without access to our proprietary systems or specifications?" "I can see the diagnostic readouts from here," Janelle said. "The pattern is clear." Preston glanced toward an investor, sharing a smirk. "Well, gentlemen, it seems we've been wasting millions on engineering degrees when we could have simply hired—" "What was it you said you do again?" "I fix engines," Janelle said simply. Preston's smile widened, spotting a chance to deflect attention from the embarrassing malfunction. "You know what? Since Ms. Carter is so confident, why don't we give her a chance to prove her theory?" He spread his arms wide in theatrical invitation. "If she fixes our multi-million-dollar prototype, I'll eat my degree." The crowd chuckled appreciatively at Preston's bravado, but the lead engineer stepped forward, alarmed. "Sir, with all due respect, we can't let an unvetted civilian—" "Oh, I'm not serious, Harland," Preston cut him off sharply, his gaze locked on Janelle. "She won't actually touch the aircraft. This is just a demonstration. An object lesson in the difference between tinkering with car engines and pioneering aerospace technology." Janelle met Preston's eyes steadily. "So you're not actually offering me a chance to try?" Her calm confidence made Preston's smirk falter for a moment. He quickly regained his composure, but Janelle caught a flicker of uncertainty behind his eyes. "By all means," Preston said, gesturing grandly toward the Skyhawk X. "Harland, give our guest 5 minutes to embarrass herself and then get back to real solutions." Harland Tate looked horrified but dared not contradict his boss in front of the investors. He reluctantly stepped aside, his expression saying loud and clear he expected nothing but disaster. As Janelle approached the aircraft, the engineers parted with smirks, anticipating her failure. She felt the weight of their judgment as she studied the exposed engine housing, her mind racing through every possibility. Liam appeared beside her, slipping her a clipboard. "Here's the system schematic," he whispered. "Thought it might help." Janelle nodded gratefully, quickly absorbing the technical details. The Skyhawk's engine was a marvel, sleek, complex, cutting edge. But beneath its innovation lay principles as old as flight itself. "I'll need tools," she said quietly. Liam hesitated, glancing toward Preston and Harland, then made his decision. Moments later he returned with a small toolkit. "Thanks," Janelle murmured, selecting a specialized wrench with the sure hands of someone who had spent years mastering her craft. She began disassembling a critical section of the engine housing, her movements precise and deliberate. Every step was efficient, practiced, and full of quiet confidence. Occasionally she referenced an obscure design principle few present recognized, but none could deny. The smirks around her slowly faded, replaced by reluctant curiosity. Even Harlan's scowl softened as Janelle exposed the auxiliary combustion system, pinpointing exactly what she had predicted, a misaligned tertiary valve causing improper fuel mixture and choking airflow. With swift, deft movements, she rewired a control panel using unconventional but undeniably effective logic. The entire process took just under 4 minutes. "Try it now," she said, stepping back and wiping her hands on a rag. Liam handed the command to Harlan, who glanced at Preston for approval. Preston gave a curt nod. The engineer initiated the restart sequence, his face a mask of skepticism. For 3 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then, a soft hum grew steadily into a confident roar. The Skyhawk X's engines came to life, not just running, but running smoother than in any previous test. The diagnostic readouts confirmed what everyone could hear: optimal performance across all systems. The hangar fell into stunned silence. Investors and military officials exchanged impressed glances. Liam couldn't hide his grin. Harlan's mouth hung open in disbelief. And Preston looked as if he had swallowed something bitter and foul. One investor broke the silence. "Well, I'd say that's worth a standing ovation, wouldn't you?" Preston, backed into a corner, forced a tight smile. "Indeed, quite unexpected." An Air Force colonel stepped forward, eyes locked on Janelle with renewed respect. "Young lady, that was impressive work. Where did you learn to diagnose systems like that?" Before Janelle could answer, Preston smoothly inserted himself between them. "A fortunate guess, Colonel, but I do admire initiative." He turned to Janelle with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Perhaps we could use someone with your unique perspective as a consultant, starting tomorrow." It wasn't a question. The investors appeared pleased, mistaking Preston's offer for generosity. But Janelle recognized the cold calculation in his eyes. He couldn't fire her now without looking petty in front of potential investors. But he had no intention of making her comfortable. "I accept," Janelle said simply. As the investors swarmed Preston with renewed enthusiasm about the Skyhawk X project, Janelle quietly packed up her tools, and Liam approached, still grinning. "That was incredible," he said. "I've never seen anyone shut them up like that." Janelle offered a small smile. "Just doing what I know." Hours later, after the investors had left and the hangar emptied to a skeleton crew, Janelle walked alone toward the parking lot. Her clothes were stained with grease, her hands blackened despite several washes. The security guard barely glanced at her temporary badge as she exited. In the privacy of her car, Janelle finally allowed herself a moment of quiet triumph. She pulled out a worn photograph from her wallet. A smiling black man in an engineer's coat standing beside a prototype jet engine. "Only step closer, Daddy," she whispered, gently touching the faded image before starting her car and driving off into the night. The next morning, Janelle returned to Ether Dynamics carrying her father's tool bag, her resolve quiet but unshakable. Gone was the element of surprise. Today she faced the full weight of a workplace that had already decided she didn't belong. The moment she stepped into the hangar, conversations died mid-sentence. Engineers who had witnessed yesterday's demonstration suddenly found their computer screens fascinating. A few junior techs offered tentative nods, but most pretended not to see her. Harlan Tate stood at the central workstation, surrounded by his inner circle of senior engineers. When he spotted Janelle, his face hardened. "Well, if it isn't Preston's new publicity stunt," he announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Come to perform more parlor tricks?" A few engineers laughed, though their amusement sounded forced. Janelle kept her expression neutral as she approached the workstation where Liam was busy inputting data. "Morning," she said quietly. Liam looked up, relief evident on his face at the sight of a friendly presence. "Hey, glad you came back. I wasn't sure you would after yesterday." "It takes more than a few cold shoulders to scare me off," Janelle replied, setting down her bag. "Well, I've been assigned to get you set up, Preston's orders." Liam lowered his voice. "Though between us, I think he's hoping you'll get overwhelmed and quit by lunch." Janelle's lips curved into a small smile. "Then he's going to be disappointed." Liam showed her to a workstation on the edge of the main floor, tucked beside a supply closet. As she settled in, Janelle observed the hangar's social dynamics. Harlan's group of older engineers clearly ran the technical side, their decades of experience earning them respect and distance from the younger staff. They were exclusively white men over 50, the old guard. "That's the old guard," Liam explained, following her gaze. "They've been here since Ether was just a defense contractor startup. Most of them worked together at Lockheed or Boeing before Preston recruited them. They don't like change." Janelle watched Liam snort. "That's putting it mildly. They barely tolerate the computer systems from this decade." After setting up her credentials and running through basic protocols, Liam hesitated. "Look, I should warn you. They think you're just here as a diversity hire, a PR puppet Preston can parade in front of investors and the media." Toward the entrance, "That's ironic, considering Preston was ready to humiliate me yesterday." "Preston plays all angles," Liam replied with a shrug. "If you fail, you're a joke. If you succeed, he takes credit for discovering you. Either way, he wins." "We'll see about that," Janelle said quietly. As the morning wore on, Janelle was assigned basic diagnostic tests, far below the complexity of what she'd handled the day before. She completed each task with methodical precision, refusing to give anyone ammunition against her competence. During a break, Liam approached with 2 coffee cups, offering one to Janelle. "Want to see something cool? If you're up for a little exploration." Curious, Janelle followed him through a maze of corridors to a rarely used part of the facility. Liam swiped his badge at a dusty door marked Archive Storage, B. "Nobody comes back here anymore," he explained. Inside, the dimly lit room was filled with filing cabinets and old computer terminals. Most designs had been digitized years ago, but some things never made it into the system. Janelle ran her fingers along a cabinet drawer labeled Project Horizons, 2004 to 2007. Something about the date range made her heart race. Liam moved to a corner where blueprint tubes lay stacked haphazardly. "I found these while looking for parts catalogs last month. Check this out." He carefully unrolled a faded blueprint onto a dusty table. Janelle's breath caught. The schematic showed an experimental propulsion system with a distinctive intake design, one she recognized instantly. "This looks like," she began, then stopped herself. "Like what?" Liam prompted. "Nothing. Just reminds me of something I saw once." Janelle studied the blueprint carefully, noting the design date, June 2006. Her father had been alive then. As they left the archives, Janelle's mind raced with questions. The blueprint's design elements were eerily similar to sketches she'd seen in her father's workshop, sketches he'd worked on in the months before his death. Back at her workstation, lost in thought, a memory surfaced. Herself as a little girl sitting on her father's lap as he explained a complex engine diagram. Dr. Elijah Carter, brilliant aerospace engineer and devoted father, had made the most advanced concepts accessible to his curious daughter. "The secret is in the flow, Nell," he'd say, his voice warm with passion. "Air and fuel must dance together perfectly. Too much of either and the music stops." The memory was interrupted by a commotion at the central console. Calibration systems showed erratic readings. Engineers clustered, discussing possible causes. Janelle approached cautiously, studying the readouts from a distance. Something about the fluctuation patterns seemed off. It wasn't consistent with normal system variants. Before she could speak, Harlan's voice cut through the discussion. "Carter, since you're so eager to show off, why don't you take a look?" The challenge was clear. Succeed and be resented more, or fail and confirm their low expectations. Janelle stepped forward, fully aware of every eye fixed on her. She carefully reviewed the diagnostic data, immediately noticing something off. The calibration parameters had been subtly altered from the standard settings. Someone had manually overridden the safety protocols. "The intake valve pressure is set too high," she said finally, her voice steady. "If we try to run the system like this, we could blow the auxiliary compressor." Harland frowned, disbelief clear on his face. "Impossible. I checked those settings myself this morning." "Then someone changed them after you checked," Janelle replied evenly, bringing up the system log on the monitor. "Here, at 10:47 a.m., there's a parameter adjustment outside the normal range. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps give light to voices that deserve to be seen and heard." The timestamp matched the time she'd been in the archives with Liam, leaving her unattended at her workstation. A heavy silence fell over the group as the implications settled in. Someone had tampered with the system, and if it failed, the blame would fall squarely on Janelle. Harlan's expression shifted from skepticism to something unreadable. Without a word, he reset the parameters to their correct values, and the system immediately stabilized. "Lucky catch," he muttered, but his eyes narrowed suspiciously at his team. Later that afternoon, Preston summoned Janelle to his office, a glass-walled room overlooking the hangar floor. Unlike the cluttered workspaces below, Preston's domain was minimalist and immaculate, with a single model of the Skyhawk X displayed prominently on his desk. "Mrs. Carter?" Preston greeted her with a corporate smile that never quite reached his eyes. "I've been hearing interesting reports about your first day. I hope they've been positive?" Janelle responded neutrally, meeting his gaze without flinching. Preston leaned back, studying her. "You know, in business, timing is everything. Knowing when to accelerate, when to brake, when to fix things." He paused meaningfully, then added, "and when to leave things broken." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. "I'm just doing the job you hired me for, Mr. Maddox," Janelle replied evenly. "Yes, well, remember, your role here is strictly consultative. You're here to observe and offer input when requested," he said, his smile tightening. "Not to disrupt established procedures or question senior staff." As Janelle returned to her workstation, she felt eyes tracking her across the hangar floor. Word of the tampered calibration system had spread, and divisions had formed. Some engineers eyed her with suspicion, others regarded her with grudging respect. She opened a maintenance panel to begin her afternoon assignment, and froze. Scratched into the metal interior, barely visible unless you looked directly, was a message. "The truth is buried in the blue jet." The handwriting was unmistakable, the same slanted script her father had used in his notebooks. That evening, after most staff had left, Janelle and Liam stayed behind to work on a system diagnostic Harland had urgently assigned just before leaving, a transparent attempt to saddle her with overtime. "You don't have to stay," Janelle told Liam as they worked. "This is obviously busy work meant to punish me," Liam shrugged. "I don't mind. Besides, I'm learning more watching you work than I did in my first 6 months here." As they tested various system parameters, Janelle introduced a sequence that struck Liam as unusual. "Wait, that's not standard protocol," he said, watching her input a complex algorithm. "What are you doing?" "It's a system override technique," Janelle explained. "Sometimes you need to bypass the standard checks to see what's really happening underneath." Liam stared at the code sequence. "I've never seen this approach before. It's not in any of our manuals." "That's because it's not Ether's technique." Janelle hesitated, then added quietly, "My father taught it to me." Recognition dawned in Liam's eyes. "Your father, Carter, Elijah Carter, the engineer who died in that prototype crash about 15 years ago?" Janelle's hand stilled on the keyboard. 18 years ago, but yes. I read about him in school. He was brilliant. His papers on propulsion dynamics are still referenced in aerospace engineering programs." Liam's expression shifted to awe. "That's why you know all this. You're his daughter." Janelle nodded slowly. "I'd appreciate if you kept that to yourself." "Of course, but why hide that legacy? It could open doors here if the board knew who you were." "If they knew who I am," Janelle interrupted, her voice dropping to a whisper, "they'd bury me like they did him." Liam's brow furrowed. "What do you mean? The official report said it was a mechanical failure during a test flight?" Janelle's eyes hardened. My father triple-checked every system before each test. He warned the company about design flaws for weeks. They ignored him and then blamed him when exactly what he predicted happened. And you think someone here was responsible? I know they were. Janelle closed the maintenance panel with quiet resolve. And I'm going to prove it. The early morning silence of Ether Dynamics' archive room enveloped Janelle as she methodically compared blueprints, determined to uncover the truth buried deep within the company's secrets. Arriving 2 hours before her shift, Janelle used a temporary access badge Liam had programmed to grant her entry to the restricted areas. The risk was worth it. Spread before her were 2 sets of designs digitally archived, copies of her father's prototypes from 18 years ago alongside the current Skyhawk X schematics she had downloaded from the company's server. At first glance they appeared entirely different. Different nomenclature, material specifications, even design philosophies. But Janelle wasn't fooled by surface details. She was looking at the bones beneath. "There you are," she whispered, tracing her finger along a distinctive fuel delivery system in the Skyhawk X plans. The configuration was unique, a modified hexagonal flow pattern that optimized combustion while reducing heat signature. It was nearly identical to a design her father had created, albeit updated with modern materials and slightly altered dimension. She pulled up another comparison, the auxiliary power routing. Beneath cosmetic changes and renamed components, the core innovation was unmistakable, Elijah Carter's work repackaged and renamed. Janelle leaned back, her heart pounding. This wasn't coincidence or convergent design thinking. Someone had taken her father's revolutionary concepts, the very concepts he died testing, and built the company's flagship product on them without attribution. That evening, seated at her kitchen table with her laptop and a cold cup of coffee, Janelle dug through old news articles and industry publications. Most covered her father's death as a tragic accident, a brilliant engineer lost to mechanical failure during a routine test flight. Few questioned the official narrative, but one small article from an industry newsletter caught her eye. It listed personnel present during the fatal test flight, including interns and support staff. Near the bottom, P. Maddox, engineering intern. The intern. Janelle stared. Preston Maddox had been there when her father died. Not just at the company, but at the actual test site. Further digging revealed Preston had been a graduate student at MIT, interning at Ether's predecessor company, Coleman Aerospace. His thesis focused on next-generation propulsion systems, the very technology her father had been developing. "You were there," Janelle murmured, staring at a grainy photo of a much younger Preston standing in the background of a team picture. "You saw what happened." The next day, Janelle arrived at work to find Liam in an unusually somber mood. Alone at the coffee station, he finally spoke. "Preston called me into his office yesterday," he said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one overheard. "Offered me a promotion to the integration team." "That's great," Janelle said, though Liam's expression told a different story. "There were conditions," Liam continued, his voice dropping lower. "He wants me to keep an eye on you and report anything unusual about your work or access to systems." Janelle's face remained neutral, though her grip tightened on the coffee cup. "What did you tell him?" "I said I'd think about it." Liam met her eyes. "Then I went home and recorded everything he said. I've got it all. The offer, the conditions, even him implying your ideas shouldn't make it into official documentation." Before Janelle could respond, the hangar doors opened. An elderly man entered, tall and thin, with a shock of white hair, carrying himself with quiet confidence. Harland immediately approached, offering a rare, genuine smile. "Delaney, what brings you out of retirement?" "Well, just checking on my legacy," the older man replied, his eyes sweeping the hangar until they landed on Janelle. For a brief moment, something like recognition flickered across his face. "That's Delaney Shaw," Liam whispered, "one of the original founders before Preston bought controlling interest. He retired about 5 years ago, but still consults occasionally." Throughout the morning, Janelle felt Delaney's eyes on her as she worked. When she finally took lunch, she found him waiting by the exit. "You're Elijah's girl," he said without preamble. Not a question, a statement of fact. Janelle hesitated, then nodded once. Thought so. You have his eyes. And his hands. The way you handle those components, deliberate, like you're having a conversation with the machine. Delaney's weathered face softened. He was the best engineer I ever worked with. You knew my father well? We worked together for 6 years. Delaney glanced around, then gestured toward the employee courtyard. Walk with me. Outside, bathed in sunlight, Delaney spoke more freely. I was on site the day of the accident, not in the control room. I was at the fabrication lab, but I heard the explosion. His eyes grew distant. By the time I got there, emergency crews were pulling him from the wreckage. Janelle had heard the story before, but never from someone who witnessed it firsthand. The official report said mechanical failure, fuel line rupture, Delaney said, his expression hardening. You don't believe it? The old engineer studied her carefully before answering. Your father came to me 2 days before the test. He had concerns about modifications made to his design, modifications he hadn't approved. What kind? They removed a safety override system he designed, said it was redundant and added unnecessary weight. Delaney shook his head. Elijah fought them on it, but management overruled him. Janelle felt a chill despite the warm sun. Who ordered the modifications? That's the thing, Delaney said. The order came through official channels, but no one would claim responsibility afterward. Everyone involved either left the company or suddenly couldn't remember the details. He leaned closer. Walk away, Janelle, before they do to you what they did to your father. As Delaney turned to leave, Janelle called after him, Why are you telling me this now? Delaney paused. Because I was a coward. 18 years ago, I knew something wasn't right. But I kept quiet to protect my job, my reputation. I've regretted it every day since. That evening, as a summer storm rolled in over the airfield, Janelle found herself alone in the parking lot, or so she thought, until a sleek black Audi pulled up beside her. The window rolled down to reveal Preston Maddox, his polished facade slightly undone by the late hour. Miss Carter, he called out, a word before you leave. Rain began to fall as Janelle approached the car, her posture guarded. Preston studied her through the open window. I understand Delaney Shaw introduced himself today. Quite the coincidence, isn't it? He's become somewhat unreliable in his old age, prone to conspiracy theories and revisionist history. His smile was cold. I wouldn't put much stock in his stories. I don't recall mentioning any stories, Janelle said coolly. Something flickered in Preston's eyes, a calculation. Let's drop the pretense, shall we? I know who you are, Janelle Carter. I knew the moment HR forwarded your application. The rain intensified, soaking through Janelle's jacket, but she stood her ground. Then you know why I'm here, she said. Preston leaned forward. I assumed it was for employment, but perhaps your motives run deeper. You think you're the first to dig up bones? Your father didn't know when to quit either. The threat hung between them, barely audible over the rain drumming on the car roof. Is that what happened? Janelle asked, voice steady despite the chill creeping through her body. Wouldn't quit, Preston replied. So you made him. Preston's laugh held no humor. Such drama. Your father died in a tragic accident, an accident caused by his own stubbornness and refusal to adapt to practical realities. You mean his refusal to compromise safety for profit? I mean his refusal to be a team player, Preston said, expression hardening, a quality his daughter seems to have inherited. With that, he rolled up the window and drove away, leaving Janelle standing, alone in the rain, her suspicions now grim certainties. The next day, during a routine maintenance check of the Skyhawk X, Janelle discovered something unexpected. Hidden inside a maintenance hatch, partially concealed behind a bundle of wiring, was a small, non-standard module with a damaged memory drive. She carefully photographed it in place before removing it, noting it wasn't included in any official schematics. The casing looked older than surrounding components, its design reminiscent of technology from nearly 2 decades ago. What did you hide? she whispered, running her fingers along the scratched surface. That evening, Janelle, Liam, and Sahana Patel, a junior engineer who had recently begun sharing knowing looks with them whenever Harland or Preston made dismissive comments, gathered in Janelle's apartment to examine the mysterious module. "It's definitely not standard ether equipment," Sahana confirmed, studying the circuit board. "The architecture is completely different." "Look at the manufacturing date. 2007, Janelle said quietly. "The year my father died." Liam connected the damaged drive to his laptop. "Most of the data is corrupted, but I might recover fragments." Hours of careful work yielded only encrypted file fragments, most too damaged to decode, but just before midnight, Liam's decryption program finally broke through. "I've got something," he announced, voice tight with excitement. The recovered file was an audio recording, badly degraded but partially audible. When they played it, Janelle's heart stopped at the sound of her father's voice, distorted but unmistakable. "If this module is active, I didn't make it." The recording ended in static, leaving them in stunned silence. "He knew," Janelle whispered. "He knew they would do this." "But what does he mean by what we died for?" Sahana asked. "He recorded this before the accident," Janelle admitted. "I don't know exactly, but this proves the Skyhawk project isn't what Preston claims. My father embedded this message for someone to find, and now we have." Liam's expression grew grim. "The question is, what do we do next?" The answer came sooner than expected. The very next day, Preston called an emergency board meeting to discuss security concerns. Janelle wasn't invited, but Liam managed to access the meeting minutes afterward. The language was carefully corporate, but the intent was clear. Preston had convinced the board that Janelle's unconventional methods posed risks to proprietary technology. Her system access was to be restricted and her work closely monitored. "He's trying to box you in," Liam explained as they reviewed the document, "making it impossible for you to find anything else without triggering security protocols." "Then we need to work faster," Janelle replied, her determination only growing stronger. Before Preston could bury the truth completely, gray clouds hung low over the airfield as the Skyhawk X prepared for its scheduled test flight. In the control room, engineers monitored systems while Preston entertained a group of Defense Department officials there to observe. Janelle stood at the back of the room, officially there to consult but effectively sidelined by Preston's new restrictions. She watched test pilot Rick Donovan run through his pre-flight checks with practiced efficiency. "All systems nominal," Rick reported over the comms. "Ready for engine start sequence." Sequence. Harland at the lead console gave the go-ahead. "Cleared for startup. Proceed with test protocol Alpha 7. As the engines powered up, Janelle's eyes remained fixed on a specific readout, the auxiliary power system she had modified days earlier without authorization. She'd installed a manual override to bypass automated controls in case the main system failed, a direct pilot activation option. The Skyhawk X taxied smoothly to the runway, its sleek form gleaming despite the overcast sky. Preston's voice carried through the control room as he boasted to officials. "This will revolutionize tactical air support. Faster response time, higher ceiling, longer range, all with a reduced infrared signature making it nearly invisible to current detection systems." The jet accelerated down the runway and lifted gracefully into the air. For the first 8 minutes everything proceeded as planned. The Skyhawk X executed a series of maneuvers demonstrating its agility and responsiveness. But at 12,000 feet, something changed. "I'm getting fluctuations in the main power grid," Rick reported, his voice professional but tense. "Significant drop in thrust." Harland leaned forward, suddenly alert. "Readings confirm power degradation. Switch to backup systems." "Backup systems not responding," Rick replied. "Primary controls becoming sluggish." The atmosphere shifted instantly, from confident demonstration to crisis mode. Engineers scrambled to diagnose as the aircraft began losing altitude. "What's happening?" one official demanded. Preston's smile had vanished. "Just a minor anomaly. Our systems have redundancies." "Main engine failing," Rick's voice cut through the tension. Attempting restart sequence. Janelle pushed through security protest, reaching the front. Rick, listen. There's a manual override panel under the right console. Black switch with a red guard. Preston spun to face her. What are you talking about? There's no such. I see it, Rick confirmed, activating the panel. For 3 terrifying seconds, nothing happened. Then the readout stabilized as auxiliary power rerouted through Janelle's modified system. I have control again, Rick reported, relief clear in his voice. System stabilizing, returning to base. The control room erupted in chaotic activity, relief mixed with urgent questions. But Janelle's focus remained on Preston, whose face had drained of color. You installed an unauthorized system on my aircraft, he hissed, grabbing her arm and pulling her aside. I installed a safety measure, Janelle corrected, pulling free, one that just saved your test pilot and your multi-million-dollar prototype. This is sabotage, industrial espionage. No, Janelle's voice rose despite herself. Sabotage is what happened to that engine. Someone deliberately compromised the power routing system, the exact same way my father's prototype was compromised 18 years ago. Preston's eyes narrowed. You have no proof. I will, Janelle promised, and when I do, everyone will know what really happened to Dr. Elijah Carter. After the Skyhawk X landed safely and the crisis management team took over, Preston moved swiftly to control the narrative. At an emergency briefing, he described the incident as a routine error, demonstrating the aircraft's exceptional fail-safe capabilities. There will be no formal investigation, he announced to the assembled engineers. Our internal team will review telemetry data and make necessary adjustments before the next test flight. Janelle stood to object. Preston cut her off sharply. Ms. Carter's consulting contract is suspended pending a security review. Security will escort her from the premises immediately. As security approached, Liam stepped forward. Sir, with all due respect, Ms. Carter's override saved the aircraft. We should at least... That will be all, Mr. Rivas, Preston interrupted coldly, unless you want your employment status reviewed as well. That evening, Janelle's phone rang. An unknown number flashed. She answered. Anne's voice spoke quietly. It's Rick Donovan, the test pilot. How did you get my number? She asked. Liam gave it to me. I had to call. Whatever you did to that aircraft saved my life today, Rick paused. But they told me to keep quiet about the manual override, said it was a confidential system enhancement that shouldn't be discussed. They're covering it up? Janelle said, unsurprised. Just like they always do. Look, I don't know what's going on between you and management, but I've flown enough experimental aircraft to know the difference between a routine error and sabotage. Rick's voice hardened. Someone wanted that flight to fail. After the call ended, Janelle sat alone in her darkened apartment, turning the damaged memory module over in her hands. Her father's partial message echoed in her mind. They're using Skyhawk to bury what we built. Her suspension might have locked her out of ether dynamics, but it hadn't weakened her resolve. If anything, the near crash had only confirmed her suspicions. The next morning she called Liam and Sahana. We need to build it, she told them as they arrived at her apartment. My father's original design, the one they corrupted. We need to build it. Sahana looked skeptical. How? We don't have access to the facilities or materials. We don't need state-of-the-art equipment, Janelle explained, spreading her father's notebooks across the kitchen table. Just enough to prove the concept works, and more importantly, that it works safely without the flaws they introduced. Liam studied the designs thoughtfully. We could use the old workshop in the disused wing, the one near the archives. Nobody goes there anymore. It's risky, Sahana warned. If we get caught, it's riskier to do nothing, Janelle replied firmly. The Skyhawk X will fly again, and next time my override might not save it. Over the next 2 weeks, working after hours and on weekends, they pieced together a small-scale version of Elijah Carter's original propulsion system. Liam borrowed components from storage, while Sahana reprogrammed outdated testing equipment to monitor their prototype. Meanwhile, despite her suspension, Janelle continued her investigation. She compiled evidence of design similarities between her father's work and the current Skyhawk, documented the safety overrides that had been removed, and created a timeline connecting Preston's rise at the company with the acquisition of Elijah's intellectual property. Their clandestine work was progressing well until one evening Liam arrived at the workshop to find Harlan Tate attempting to access Janelle's workstation. "What are you doing here?" Liam demanded, blocking the older engineer's path. Harlan jumped, clearly surprised. "I could ask you the same question. This area is restricted. So is someone else's workstation." "What are you looking for?" Liam pressed. For a moment it seemed Harlan might bluff his way out, but then his shoulders sagged. "Preston sent me. He wants to know what Carter found, what evidence she has." "Evidence of what?" Liam asked, genuinely confused. Harlan's expression turned bitter. "You know exactly what. The stolen designs, the safety protocols that were removed, all of it. If you know about that, why are you helping him cover it up?" Liam demanded. "Because 18 years ago I signed off on those removed safety measures," Harlan admitted, his voice hollow. "Preston convinced me they were redundant, unnecessary weight. When the prototype crashed and Elijah died, I realized what I'd done, but by then it was too late." "So you've been covering for Preston all these years?" "As evidence of my negligence. If the truth about Carter's death comes out, I'll face criminal charges." Harlan's eyes met Liam's. "I have grandchildren, Rivas, a reputation. I can't go to prison at my age." The following day, the Ether Dynamics board convened again. Preston pushed for Janelle's immediate termination and a complete security lockdown on the Skyhawk project. "She's unstable," Preston argued, "fixated on conspiracy theories about her father's accident. She's installed unauthorized modifications to our prototype and accessed restricted archives." The vote seemed headed in Preston's favor until Liam entered the boardroom unannounced, carrying a thumb drive. "Before you vote," he said, addressing the board directly, "you should hear this." He'd played the audio recording he'd made weeks earlier. Preston offering him a promotion in exchange for spying on Janelle, admitting knowledge of her father's designs and instructing Liam to ensure certain documentation disappeared. The boardroom fell silent as the recording ended. Preston's face turned an alarming shade of red. "This is taken completely out of context," he sputtered. "It's been edited, manipulated. The full recording is available for forensic analysis." Liam replied calmly, along with timestamps and metadata. The board chair, a stern woman in her 60s, removed her glasses. "I believe we need to reconsider this vote, and perhaps open a more thorough investigation into these allegations." The vote to terminate Janelle failed. Instead, the board authorized an internal review of the Skyhawk project's development history and the circumstances surrounding Dr. Elijah Carter's death. Preston stormed from the boardroom, but his victory was short-lived. That evening, as Janelle visited her mother's grave with fresh flowers, she finally allowed herself to break down. "I wanted to be just like him, Mom," she whispered, tracing the adjacent headstone marking her father's resting place. "I dreamed of being a fighter pilot, designing planes that would change the world, but after he died, I couldn't even bear to look at an aircraft." She wiped away tears. "But now I'm finishing what he started. I'm making it right." Unknown to Janelle, at that very moment Sahana was making a breakthrough. The memory drive they'd found in the Skyhawk X had finally yielded its secrets after weeks of painstaking data recovery. When Janelle returned to her apartment, Liam and Sahana were waiting, their faces a mix of triumph and grim satisfaction. "We got it all," Sahana announced, her voice trembling with excitement. "Your father's complete designs, his test logs, and—" She paused. "A safety override system he documented before being ordered to remove it. The same override that would have prevented his crash." Janelle stared at the screen, absorbing her father's meticulous notes and the damning evidence they contained. After 18 years, the truth was finally in her hands. "What do we do now?" Sahana asked. Janelle's phone lit up with a notification. She'd been following a tech journalist on social media for weeks, watching his coverage of aerospace innovation and corporate ethics. Now she had a story for him. "Now," she said, her finger hovering over the contact button, "we make sure everyone knows what happened." She pressed send on a message that would change everything. I have evidence of stolen designs and unsafe engineering practices at Ether Dynamics that led to a fatal crash 18 years ago. Are you interested? The response came almost immediately. Very. When can we talk? The morning sun barely crested the horizon when Janelle's phone began buzzing incessantly. Overnight, the tech world had exploded with the news. The article, Stolen Legacy, How Ether Dynamics Built an Empire on a Dead Man's Genius, had gone live at midnight and was already trending on every major platform. Janelle sat at her kitchen table, coffee growing cold as she scrolled through reactions. The journalist, Marcus Webb, had done a masterful job presenting the evidence. Side-by-side comparisons of Elijah's designs with the Skyhawk X, testimonials from anonymous engineers, and a timeline linking Preston's rise with the acquisition of Elijah's work. Her phone rang again. "Liam, have you seen it?" he asked without preamble. "I'm looking at it now," Janelle replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "It's more than I expected. It's everywhere. The stock is already down 15% in pre-market trading." Liam paused. "And there are protesters gathering outside Ether headquarters." Janelle moved to the window and looked down at the street. A news van was parked across from her apartment building. "They're here too. Are you ready for this?" Once she stepped outside, everything would change. Janelle thought about 18 years of silence, of questions unanswered, a brilliant legacy buried by corporate greed. "I've been ready since the day he died." By mid-morning, the story had reached mainstream news. Video footage showed dozens of protesters outside Ether Dynamics, holding signs demanding accountability and justice for Dr. Elijah Carter. Social media flooded with hashtags, "Justice for Elijah" and "Etherlease," trending nationally. Preston's response came swiftly and ruthlessly. A press release from Ether Dynamics categorically denied all allegations, dismissing them as vindictive fabrications from a disgruntled temporary employee with a personal vendetta. The company announced it was pursuing legal action against both Janelle and the publication for defamation. "Was it coming along?" Marrow asked, her eyes scanning the work with sincere interest. "We're on schedule," Janelle replied. "The propulsion system is fully integrated, and we've successfully tested the auxiliary power grid. Most importantly, the triple redundant safety override functions exactly as my father designed it." An older board member who had often clashed with Preston stepped forward. "The board has been discussing the company's future in light of recent events. We believe a fresh start is in order." Janelle nodded, assuming this meant a new marketing campaign or restructuring. The board member continued. "Ether Dynamics will be rebranded as Carter Aerospace Technologies in honor of Dr. Elijah Carter's contributions to the industry." The hangar fell silent. Janelle stared, certain she had misheard. "You're naming the company after my father?" Dr. Marrow smiled warmly. "It's long overdue. Elijah's vision is the foundation of our best technology. It's time the world recognized that." Tears welled in Janelle's eyes before she could stop them. Around her, the engineering team broke into spontaneous applause, none more enthusiastic than Harlan Tate, now one of her strongest advocates since his confession. Later that day, as news of the rebranding spread through the company and industry, word came that Preston Maddox had been located in Singapore and was being extradited to face charges of corporate fraud, intellectual property theft, and negligent homicide. The trial became a media sensation. Day after day, journalists, industry insiders, and the public filled the courtroom, captivated by the story of stolen genius and delayed justice. Harlan testified, visibly aged by the strain of finally speaking the truth. Multiple whistleblowers followed, revealing the pattern of deception and safety compromises that defined Preston's leadership. On the third day, Janelle was called to the stand. Walking to the witness box, she felt the weight of 18 years of grief, questions, and searching. She was no longer the outsider in worn overalls who had entered Ether Dynamics on a dare. Now she was the engineer leading her father's legacy rebirth. "Ms. Carter," the prosecutor began, "could you describe your father's reputation in the aerospace engineering community?" Janelle spoke clearly, voice steady. My father was known for two things: his brilliant innovations in propulsion technology and his unwavering commitment to safety. He believed the two were inseparable, that true innovation protects lives rather than risks them. And based on your expertise and the evidence you've uncovered, what compromised those principles in his final project? His safety override system was deliberately removed against his explicit warnings. The documentation we recovered shows Preston Maddox ordered this modification to impress investors with performance capabilities, despite being warned of catastrophic risks. Preston, seated at the defense table in an immaculate suit, stared at her with cold hatred. Throughout questioning, Janelle maintained composure, explaining complex technical concepts in terms the jury could understand. She let the facts speak for themselves. Then came the surprise that shifted the trial: an old audio recording discovered in her father's tape recorder during workshop cleanup. The courtroom fell silent as Elijah Carter's voice filled the room, captured in a conversation from 18 years ago. "I'm recording this because I need a record. Preston, you're asking me to remove a critical safety system for a demonstration flight. I've explained the risks, and I'm documenting that you're overruling my objections, despite knowing this creates an unacceptable hazard." Preston's younger voice replied, "The override makes the system look sluggish to investors. We need to show the full performance envelope." "You're being paranoid, Elijah. This is why you're still just an engineer, while I'm moving into management. Sometimes you have to take calculated risks." "There's nothing calculated about this," Elijah countered. "It's reckless if anything happens during that flight." Bryce interrupted. "And if it does? Well, that's why we have insurance." The recording ended. The courtroom sat in stunned silence before murmurs filled the air. The judge called for order, but the damage was done. Preston's face had gone ashen. 3 weeks later, the verdict surprised no one. Preston Maddox was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. As the judge pronounced the sentence, Janelle sat perfectly still, expression unchanged. This wasn't a moment for celebration or vindication, only quiet acknowledgement that justice, though delayed, had arrived. "Justice," she whispered to herself as Preston was led away in handcuffs. In the months that followed, Carter Aerospace Technologies rose from scandal's ashes to become a symbol of innovation with integrity. The newly rebuilt aircraft, officially named Elijah 1, was prepped for its inaugural test flight on what would have been Elijah Carter's 60th birthday. That morning, Janelle surprised everyone with an announcement. Standing before assembled engineers, investors, and media, she revealed her decision as project lead. "I've overseen every detail of Elijah 1's reconstruction. I know this aircraft inside and out, every system, every safety protocol, every contingency. That's why I will be serving as test pilot for today's flight." A murmur ran through the crowd. Dr. Morrow stepped forward. "Janelle, are you certain we have qualified test pilots available?" Janelle nodded, her decision unshakable. "This aircraft represents my father's vision and my engineering expertise. There's no one better qualified to demonstrate its capabilities and safety features." As she headed toward the locker room to change, Liam caught up with her. Their relationship had been strained since their argument months before, but professional respect remained. "You never mentioned you were a pilot," Liam said, falling into step beside her. "There's a lot I never mentioned," Janelle replied. "I got my license at 19 and did advanced training at 22. It was my way of connecting with him after he died, understanding what he experienced." Liam hesitated, then admitted what he'd been holding back. "I'm leaving next month. I accepted a position with an NGO developing humanitarian drone systems in conflict zones." Janelle stopped walking, genuinely surprised. "That's a big change." "I learned something important from you," Liam said. "Engineering isn't just about building impressive things. It's about making a difference, saving lives." For the first time in months, the tension between them dissolved. Janelle offered her hand. "They're lucky to have you." Liam took it, then surprised her with a quick hug. "Fly safe up there." An hour later, Janelle sat in the cockpit of Elijah 1, running through pre-flight checks with methodical precision. The flight suit fit perfectly, the helmet a comfortable weight. Through the canopy, she saw the crowd gathered at a safe distance. Colleagues, reporters, industry representatives, all watching with anticipation. "Control, this is Elijah 1, she spoke into her headset. "All systems nominal, request clearance for takeoff." "Elijah 1, this is Control," came Sahana's voice. "You are cleared for takeoff. Godspeed, Janelle." The engines hummed to life, not with the aggressive roar of the Skyhawk X, but with a confident, steady power that spoke of precise engineering and balanced design. As Janelle guided the aircraft down the runway, she felt a presence beside her. Not a ghost, but a legacy, made tangible through steel and circuitry. "Let's show them what you built, Dad," she whispered as Elijah 1 lifted gracefully into the clear blue sky. The test flight was flawless. For 45 minutes, Janelle executed a carefully planned series of maneuvers demonstrating not only performance but responsiveness and stability. Elijah's hybrid propulsion system, the most revolutionary concept, performed exactly as simulations had predicted, delivering exceptional thrust with minimal fuel consumption and a dramatically reduced heat signature. Across the nation, the flight was live-streamed in schools. Young black girls watched wide-eyed as Janelle Carter, engineer, pilot, daughter, soared through the sky in an aircraft of her own making. Engineering students studied the revolutionary technology demonstrated, while corporate boardrooms buzzed with executives reconsidering what was possible when innovation was paired with integrity. When Janelle finally brought Elijah 1 in for a perfect landing, the applause was deafening. Cameras flashed, reporters called out questions. But it was a young group of children, participants in a STEM education program, who captured her attention. A black girl, no more than 12, pushed forward through the crowd, clutching a notebook. "Miss Carter, was it scary up there?" she asked. Janelle knelt to meet her at eye level, remembering herself at that age, sitting on her father's lap as he explained engines. "Not scary. Exciting. The sky belongs to dreamers just as much as anyone else." The girl nodded solemnly. "I want to build planes too. My science teacher says girls don't become engineers, but I told him you did." Janelle's expression softened. "What's your name?" "Zoe." "Well, Zoe, you tell your teacher that Janelle Carter says he's wrong. The future, a flight needs your dreams." She gestured to the aircraft behind them. "Never let anyone steal your fire." As the crowd dispersed and technical teams began post-flight analyses, Janelle found a quiet moment beside Elijah 1. She ran her hand along the smooth fuselage, feeling the culmination of 2 generations of Carter innovation beneath her fingertips. "We flew, Dad," she whispered. "Together." 1 year after the Elijah 1's successful test flight, Carter Aerospace Technologies hosted a gala unlike any the industry had seen. The main lobby had been transformed for the launch of the Elijah Carter Fellowship, a program funding engineering education for underrepresented youth. The room buzzed with excitement as aerospace executives mingled with educators, current Carter engineers, and the first class of fellowship recipients, 20 brilliant young minds from traditionally underrepresented STEM backgrounds. Janelle stood at the podium, dressed in an elegant pantsuit that was both professional and a statement. The crowd quieted. 18 months ago, I walked into this building looking for a temp mechanic job, she began, eliciting knowing smiles. I was judged not for my skills, but for how I looked, where I came from, what I represented. She paused, eyes finding the young fellowship recipients. That judgment was nothing new. My father faced it decades ago, as a brilliant black engineer in an industry not ready to see past skin color to the genius within. But he persisted. He built anyway, he dreamed anyway. Behind her, a large display showed the fellowship's first graduating class, diverse young faces full of promise and determination. "The Elijah Carter Fellowship isn't just about funding education," Janelle said. "It's about changing who gets to innovate, who gets to dream, who gets to build the future. It's about ensuring no brilliant mind is overlooked because they don't fit someone's narrow idea of what an engineer looks like." The applause was heartfelt and sustained. After stepping down, Dr. Marrow approached with a surprising proposal. The board meeting went well yesterday. They unanimously approved offering you the position of Chief Innovation Officer. Janelle raised an eyebrow. That's unexpected. You've revolutionized our design approach, established safety protocols becoming industry standards, and your name carries weight we desperately need. Marrow smiled. Plus, you're a damn good engineer. Janelle considered the offer, watching fellowship recipients discuss projects with veterans, some who might once have dismissed them. I appreciate the offer, she said finally, but I'd like to propose something else. She explained, I want to head a new division, the Carter Mentorship Program. We'd work directly with engineering students, recent graduates, and career changers from underrepresented backgrounds. Marrow studied her thoughtfully. Instead of the executive suite, you want to be in the trenches, shaping the next generation. That's where I belong, Janelle confirmed. My father was a great engineer, but his greatest gift wasn't his designs. It was the time he spent teaching me, showing me how to see the world through an engineer's eyes. Later that evening, at the gala's close, Janelle found Liam returned from his humanitarian drone work. His appearance was more rugged, suntanned, but his eyes held familiar intelligence and humor. The mentorship program is perfect for you, he said with genuine admiration. You're a natural teacher. And you? How's saving the world going? Janelle smiled. I'm drone delivery at a time, Liam replied. Challenging work, but when medical supplies reach a village cut off by conflict, it makes those late nights worth it. Their conversation was interrupted by Sahana, now lead engineer for Carter's next-generation projects. Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone you need to meet, she said, introducing a young, bright, eager engineer clearly in awe of Janelle. After discussing the young engineer's ideas to improve fuel efficiency, Sahana pulled Janelle aside. She reminds me of someone, Sahana said with a knowing smile. A few years ago I would have been too intimidated to speak up or suggest improvements. Watching you stand your ground changed that. Janelle squeezed her friend's shoulder. You always had it in you. You just needed to see it was possible. The next morning, Janelle visited a local middle school STEM program, invited to speak. The classroom was filled with curious faces, many from backgrounds like her own. At the back, a young black girl sat with serious eyes and a sketch pad full of aircraft drawings. After the presentation, Janelle approached. May I see what you're working on? The girl hesitated, then turned the sketch pad around, revealing detailed drawings of aircraft with innovative wing designs and carefully noted specifications. These are impressive, Janelle said, genuinely moved. You've really thought about airflow dynamics here, the girl admitted. My dad says I'm silly for drawing planes all the time. He says it's not what girls do. Janelle knelt beside her, meeting her eyes. My dad told me I could build anything I could imagine, and he was right. Reaching into her bag, Janelle pulled out a small pin, a pair of stylized wings with Janelle Carter Future Flyer engraved beneath. I've been saving this for someone special, she said, handing it to the girl. Someone who sees the sky as a beginning, not a limit. The girl's eyes widened as she carefully took the pin. This is the very first one, Janelle confirmed, blinking back unexpected tears. Wear it proudly. That afternoon, back at her office, Janelle found a package waiting. The return address was unfamiliar, but the handwriting on the label matched her father's notebooks. With trembling fingers, she opened it to find a sealed envelope addressed to her, and a note explaining the letter was found in an old storage crate during clearance of a defunct aerospace facility. Janelle opened the envelope as if it might dissolve. Inside was a letter from her father, dated 3 days before his fatal flight. My dearest Janelle, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong. I pray it's not the case, but engineers plan for contingencies. So here we are. I've enclosed a photo of us from last summer, you sitting in the cockpit of that old Cessna pretending to fly while I explain the controls. The joy on your face is what I think of whenever I doubt my path. You ask me why I build things that fly. I told you it's because the sky is the greatest challenge, but the truth is simpler. Build because you're watching, because someday you'll build too. Maybe airplanes, maybe something else entirely. What matters is that you know it's possible. Some people won't want you to succeed. They'll see your brilliance as a threat. Never let that stop you. Build anyway, dream anyway, fly anyway. This design I'm testing tomorrow, it's revolutionary. It will change everything if it works, and someday, maybe you'll take it further than I ever could when you build your own wings. Enclosed was a faded photo. 11-year-old Janelle in the cockpit of a small plane, her father leaning in beside her, both beaming with identical smiles of wonder and possibility. Janelle held the photo to her heart. 18 years of grief and purpose crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. The letter wasn't just a goodbye. It was a handoff, a passing of the torch from one generation of innovation to the next. Months later, as Janelle watched a new class of mentees working on their first project, she sketched an idea forming in her mind. An interatmospheric shuttle, based on her father's propulsion concepts but capable of reaching the edge of space. A true bridge between worlds. "Time to go higher," she whispered, adding details to her preliminary design. From her office window, she saw Elijah 1 in the test field being prepped for another demonstration flight. One stolen legacy, now a testament to persistence, justice, and the power of truth to break through even the most carefully constructed deception. Janelle watched the sunset glint off its wings from the observation deck, her eyes sparkling. Not with pain and determination, but with hope. Hope for a future where innovation serves humanity, not ego, where brilliance is recognized regardless of its packaging. Below, in the lobby, visitors paused before a newly installed mural. Elijah and Janelle Carter standing side by side, blueprints in hand, the past and future of aerospace innovation united in a single image of possibility. Beneath it, the company's new motto, "We build for those who dare to dream." As the sun sank below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the airfield, Janelle Carter, engineer, pilot, mentor, daughter, turned back to her designs, adding her own innovations to her father's legacy, extending the journey they had begun together. The cycle complete, the future waiting. What would you risk to claim a legacy stolen from you? Janelle's journey reminds us, justice demands courage, even when standing alone. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories of underdogs who refuse to let their brilliance be buried. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. In a world that can sometimes feel overwhelming, it's the small acts of kindness and courage that remind us of our shared humanity. Compassion has the power to heal wounds, justice can restore hope, and every gentle action, no matter how quiet, can ripple outward to change lives in ways we never imagined. If this story touched your heart, consider sharing it with someone who might need a little light today. And if you want to walk alongside us as we explore more stories of hope and humanity, please subscribe. Remember, even the smallest flame can brighten the darkest night. Until next time, keep kindness alive.